call to order the joint meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission and Overlay District Board over Zoom and in person. We do have a quorum present, and it is now 6:30. Listeners must sign into the event in order to comment. Please use the raise hand function to participate in any public hearing process while using the Zoom application. If you have called into the meeting, press *9 to raise your hand and speak. If you have a technical issue reconnecting to this meeting or during the meeting, call 817-938-4409. The first item on the agenda tonight is to approve the minutes for the last meeting. And if there are, of July 6th, if there are no additions or corrections, may I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion is by Karen.
Second.
Second by Francis. And we're ready to vote.
Hold on, I'm sorry, give me 1 second. It's not, the action I did note is approved, but it's not getting that option in the system at the moment. But I will record in the minutes that it was
Okay,
approved.
so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing for plans and zoning text amendments. This Louisville public hearing is consideration amendments to Chapter 17, the zoning of the Louisville City Code, by amending Section 17-3 definitions to amend the definition of motor freight terminal and Section 17-23 light industrial district to add motor freight terminal as a permitted use within a requirement for a special use permit.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is a change that staff is bringing forward based on the increased demand we've seen towards delivery centers that are geared towards dispatch and delivery towards individual homeowners as opposed towards stores. They do have a significant impact in terms of traffic generation. We have seen a large demand for these type of uses based on the pandemic, which accelerated the shift towards delivery and home delivery of goods. So we want to make sure that these distribution facilities, which are often referred to as neighborhood fulfillment centers, e-commerce distribution, or last mile distribution, are appropriately located, since they can have some negative consequences on traffic, congestion, air quality, light, and noise. And so we're asking to clarify the definition of motor freight terminal to include those uses. This definition is currently only allowed in the warehouse zoning district. Because a lot of our light industrial and heavy industrial zoning districts might also be appropriate for these uses, particularly where there's a large warehouse facility, we are recommending that the use motor freight terminal be permitted by SUP in the light industrial zoning district. That will automatically allow it to be permitted only by SUP in the heavy industrial zoning district as well. And it would also remain in the warehouse zoning district. So there would be those 3 zoning districts where an SUP would be required for one of those types of uses. So staff is here if you have any questions, and the draft ordinance was provided in the backup.
Is there any discussion or questions? Okay, I'll go ahead now and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please follow the instructions I read earlier or come forward, sign in, and we'll be happy to hear from you.
There are no public attendees for this hearing virtually either.
Okay, having no one come forward, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, is there any discussion on this item? If not, then may I have a motion, please?
I move to approve.
Motion by, is that Aaron? Sorry. Motion by Aaron. Second by Alvin. Time to vote.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to hit the button.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Commissioners. This item will be going to City Council at their August 2nd City Council meeting.
Okay. The next item is selection of a chair, vice chair, and zoning board of adjustments representative for the next year.
Apologies, Commissioners. This will not be going August 2nd. It will be going August. It will be. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. At this time, I will go ahead and entertain a motion for any, and I guess we'll do the chair first, for a chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I move Mary Ellen Visca for chair for the next year.
Motion by Karen.
I second.
Second by, I heard Alvin.
Good,
Second by Alvin. Time to vote. Motion passes 6-0. Next, for a motion for the vice chair. Do I have a motion?
I nominate Aram Ali for vice chair.
Second. Motion by Karen, second by Sheila.
Give me just a second to put this in here.
Motion passes 6-0. And I need a motion for the zoning board of adjustment representative.
I nominate Francis.
Okay, motion is by Aram,
Second.
second by Alvin.
Give me just a second to get that one in there as well.
Motion passes 6-0. The next item is that the overlay district board will meet following the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And now I would entertain a motion for adjournment, please.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Was that Aram on the initial motion?
Francis.
You must have the same voice.
Should do sound. Yeah, it comes from the same direction. And that motion passes 6-0. Planning and zoning is now adjourned. We will go right on into the overlay district board meeting. We will now call that to order. We do have a quorum present. The first item on the agenda is the consideration of the approval of the July 6th, 2021 meeting and overlay district board. Then if there are no corrections or changes, may I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Karen.
Second by Francis.
Second by Francis. Thank you. Nice to have it nice and clear.
You're both on my left. I didn't hear you.
Motion passes 6-0. The next item is consideration of 10 alternative standards associated with a new building for Boomer Jacks located at 2437 South Stemmons Freeway, legally described as Vista Ridge Mall Addition, Lot 11R1, Block A, zoned General Business District, as Daniel Stewart, Development Engineering Consultants, LLC, on behalf of Bill Stubbs and Company Incorporated, the property owner.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this request for alternative standards is to build a new restaurant building on the site. They do plan to use much of the existing site layout. They just would like a slightly larger restaurant. So they would be demolishing the existing building and then rebuilding. They do plan to use the existing parking lot as it's laid out today. Because of this, there are 10 alternative standards, 9 of which you can make a recommendation on and 1 of which you can approve. So I'll go through them. The first ones that you can make a recommendation on are to increase the build-to zone of 0 to 70 feet instead of 0 to 10 feet. And this is along the entry road into the mall, which is designated as a primary pedestrian route or a private vehicular route. And we wanted to bring buildings up to the street. In this case, the building is still closer to the street than the parking lot. They're using a lot of the existing grading on the site because of the mall entry road and kind of the grade as you turn into the site. In addition, there's a large planter that they plan to reuse and put plantings into. And there's a lot of mature landscaping that they're going to keep. So the building will be in approximately the same footprint, even though it's a little bit farther back from the primary pedestrian street. Staff doesn't have much issue with this based on the fact that it's on the edge and right adjacent to the highway. So this would literally be the last parcel that people would be walking to along that primary pedestrian street. The second is to allow a 40-foot build-to along Highway I-35E. And this can be an alternative standard if it's requested for parking between the building and the highway. That's not what they're doing. This is, again, to accommodate the existing grade and landscaping. It actually is getting closer to the highway than the current building is today. They have a large patio that's part of their footprint that will be along the highway side. And it's fairly enclosed, but it is a patio space. The second is to allow a driveway without a deceleration lane along I-35E. And this is in part due to the proposed future expansion of the highway where there plan to be 3 frontage road lanes. TxDOT does not put in deceleration lanes when there's 3 frontage road lanes. So if they were to put in a deceleration lane, it would be torn out and redone. And so we don't see much value in doing that. There's also not one today, and switching the restaurant will not generate any more traffic than there is today. The fourth item D is to allow street spacing up to 50 feet and in a regular manner along the primary pedestrian street in lieu of 30 feet on center. And this is to plant around some of the existing trees and utilities. So they are planting the required number of trees, but because they have a deeper buffer, the way that they're planting them, the distance between the trees does exceed 30 feet. The E is to allow trees to be located in existing landscape areas within the parking lot in lieu of requiring 10-foot wide landscape islands every 8 spaces. So again, they're providing the required number of trees. They're just using the existing landscape areas on the site to fit those trees into the site. And so that's one we've seen fairly commonly when we're trying to reuse some existing infrastructure. F is to allow 3 pedestrian scale lightings added as shown, and those are basically coming from the mall along that primary pedestrian private vehicular route to the entrance of the building in lieu of requiring them along I-35 and every 40 feet on center. And staff's okay with this again because this property is on the edge of the core subdistrict and it's right adjacent to I-35. So pedestrian traffic in future is intended to come primarily from the mall direction west of this site, and it would be the last site on the edge. To allow a reduction in pedestrian amenities from 4 trash receptacles to 1, from 2 bike racks to 1, and from 15 benches to 1. And this is again being requested for similar reasons. We don't really anticipate a whole lot of pedestrian traffic along the highway or past the entrance to this site. But they are putting in a bench and bike racks to provide some pedestrian amenities where there are none today. The next item is to allow a reduction to 25% windows on ground floor facades on primary pedestrian streets and adjacent to sidewalks in lieu of the minimum 60% required. And then this is, actually surprised me. I thought they had a larger percentage looking at their elevations than they did. They've placed the windows to create rhythm and to be very prominent in the facade. And so there are quite an amount of windows facing the parking lot. They did reorient the kitchen so that they could have more windows along the primary pedestrian street private vehicular route. And so there's a little bit fewer windows facing the parking lot and more windows facing the primary pedestrian street private vehicular route than the original submittal that they gave us. They don't want to put windows in the kitchen and storage areas and freezer areas for obvious reasons. So then item I is to allow a reduction in awnings along the primary pedestrian street by providing 30% in lieu of 75%. This awning actually aligns with the windows that they're providing. And so the building is set back farther, again, based on the existing landscaping and grading and planter. And so really having a lot of awnings wouldn't be beneficial to the pedestrians and the sidewalk because they're not up and adjacent to each other. So staff was fine with that. And those are all the items that the board may recommend approval of. The item that the board has the authority to approve is to allow one existing 4-foot sidewalk in lieu of a 6-foot sidewalk. And this is the existing sidewalk that is along Highway 35. And so that is the request that the overlay district board may approve tonight. In addition, there are 3 administrative modifications that staff can approve pending authority of the rest of these being approved. And that is to allow a 9-foot landscape buffer in lieu of a 10-foot landscape buffer, and that reflects the existing site conditions. And to allow the large masonry planter to be reused for landscaping as a pedestrian amenity. And to allow a reduction to 78% stone and brick on the north elevation facing the parking lot in lieu of the required 80%. And that's because they have some concrete accents that don't really count, as well as some metal that's part of the general boomer jack standard. So that concludes my presentation. The applicant is here tonight, and I know he would like to speak as well, but if you have any questions, myself and the applicant are here for them.
Okay. Before we hear from the applicant, are there any discussion or questions for Michelle or for staff?
And our recommendation is to recommend approval of items E through I as presented and to approve item J as presented.
Okay, at this time, if our applicant would like to speak, please come forward and if you wouldn't mind, sign in and state your name. Should be a sign-in sheet up there. Is there?
I don't see a sign-in sheet now.
Oh. Okay.
I have his information.
Okay.
Maybe I'll take that out of my repertoire. What is your name, please?
Good evening. My name is Daniel Stewart with DEC, and I'm representing Boomer Jacks for this submittal, who is the proposed restaurant user. And just wanted to give you a brief presentation, see if I can answer any questions for you in regards to our submittal tonight. As I said, this proposed restaurant will be Boomer Jacks. Just to give you kind of a quick idea of who they are and what their restaurant looks like. I got a couple pictures up here for you. This is a restaurant that was recently completed in Plano. And as Michelle said, that these are, there's a big emphasis for them on the patio. If we can go back, yeah. So that's a look at their outdoor patio. It is almost as big as their interior dining room. As far as square footage goes. So that's a big emphasis for the restaurant. And that's why you see such a prominent footprint area dedicated to that patio. So it's a very active environment. They have the container bar that sits out there with it, some fire pits, bar height tables, TVs, very family friendly atmosphere, very active in ambiance for the restaurant. And so they do have 16 other locations in the FW already. They're looking to expand. One of the exciting things about this proposed restaurant is this will, as Michelle said, be a revised footprint from what they typically have done in the past. They've kind of reoriented the interior layout to really help kind of promote this main entry on the primary pedestrian street and really enhance the access into the restaurant and the patio itself. So yeah, and so just going real quick, just a brief overview of the existing conditions. This is the old Macaroni Grill site by Vista Ridge Mall, and it's a quick aerial look of it. You can kind of see, as Michelle indicated, the grade difference between street and building in these couple pictures. This one's looking north right there. So I-35 is on the right-hand side. in the old Macaroni Grill, the building there on the left. So you can kind of see that grade difference of there's about a 5 to 7 foot grade difference between the building and the streets adjacent to it. If we go to the next slide, yeah. So just I'll run through the requests that we're asking for just real briefly. Michelle did a great job of briefing this and typing all up. But as she mentioned, the build to zone modifications drawn in red there. We are going to stick more or less to that existing footprint location. Obviously, with the grade differentials, we don't want to expand out too far past that and recreate all that landscaping in there. So that gives you kind of a brief overview of what that request is. No deceleration lane along I-35. She went over the proposed textile improvements that would really negate any construction that we did in the first place. And then the existing sidewalk is drawn in red there. There's a picture of it. The sidewalk's in really good shape. We just didn't see that there was going to be a need to really enhance or extend that out to 6 feet. You have one of two options: either tear out the sidewalk and rebuild it at 6, or add 2 feet on the side. Adding 2 feet is going to make it look bad, honestly. And tearing it out, we just felt like that wasn't needed. It's in really good shape, and as soon as you start tearing that stuff up, you open yourself up for that sidewalk to heave and settle, and then doesn't become accessible anymore, and it actually becomes worse. So we'd like to just keep that existing sidewalk. It's in good shape. The 9-foot landscape buffer, you can kind of see there's a bunch of really good mature landscaping along I-35. That's backed up right to that curb. So we'd like to just take the required 10-foot, back it down to 9 so that we can keep all that existing landscaping. As soon as you come up there and tear out that curb, you just open yourself up to damage some of that landscaping. The trees along the primary pedestrian street, we really thought we were meeting the intent of this, but you can kind of see those darker green circles are the existing trees. Obviously, they weren't planted exactly 30 feet on center, and we tried to provide some meandering sidewalk through there to make sure that those existing trees were saved. The two lighter green on the top are the proposed trees. We tried to space those, like I said, with the intent of the ordinance, but we did have the existing sign base there to contend with. So we're averaging the 30 feet that's required, but not exactly spaced out that way because of those existing conditions. As she mentioned, the existing landscape islands are there. We are going to keep the existing parking lot layout. We'll make a couple small repairs to it just to make sure that it's nice. Parking lot for guests, but more or less just keep all that stuff the exact same. We are proposing to plant trees in some of these existing islands to meet the landscaping regulations. And for the most part, most of those bays meet the existing code. I think there's one in the middle there that is over the 8 spaces required, and then some along the outer boundaries where there are trees right next to the spaces anyway. So keeping those the same. Pedestrian scale lighting, again, there's a lot of existing landscaping through here that we're trying to preserve, and so we're hoping to put some pedestrian scale lighting in there that meets that intent and really draws that or ties this site into the future development of the concept plan. And can we back up one? So just to FY, the pedestrian scale lighting that we are proposing are those yellow dots. We've stopped them at the main entry. Anything after that, you're going to the front of the road. Really don't want people going to the front of the road. It's never typically a safe condition for those guys or for anybody to be walking along a freeway. So we'd like to stop that there and tie them back into the front door and or when they come out, give them even more indication that, hey, turning right is the better way to go and back into the future development. And then the pedestrian scale amenities, similar to what we talked about before, the sidewalk that we're proposing extends outside of that so that we can keep these existing trees. And so the pedestrian amenities would be placed on that sidewalk just outside that street face zone, just because we're trying to fit to existing. The 25% windows, Michelle and I went back and forth. it looks like much more than 25%. That's how it calculates out. But I think the appearance is much higher than the percentage indicates. But as she said, we do have a kitchen. There are some kitchen areas and cooler freezer areas that we have to contend with, which just aren't conducive to windows. And so we did modify these elevations quite a bit from what was initially submitted to try to bring those as high as possible. And think that, again, this is meeting the intent of the ordinance. And then the same thing with the awnings and canopies. Again, we have a kitchen and a cooler and freezer that have to go somewhere. So we have not proposed any awnings and canopies there, but we do have the large patio there. So I think that the look and feel is going to be in agreement with other development that does happen along this primary pedestrian street. I think it's going to feel the same, even though we have this reduction in the percentage. And then this is just our concept plan. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have, and of course that we have approval and of recommendation tonight.
Are there any questions for Mr. Stewart? No. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to see this building being put to use.
Well, we're excited about it. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, commissioners? No? Okay, in that case, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move for the approval of standards A through I and the alternative standard J as requested in association with the new building for Boomer Jacks.
Motion by Sheila.
Second.
Second by Karen. No vote. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, commissioners. We will take the alternative standards that require council approval to the meeting that will be on August 16th.
The final item for us tonight is adjournment. May I have a motion, please?
Motion to adjourn, Francis.
Motion by Francis.
I second.
Second by Aram. Motion passes 6-0. We are adjourned.